Haruto took the bus home, but he was killed in an accident. 2 other girls were killed at the time of the accident. The scene shifts to the Bertram Kingdom in 991, where a boy awakens from a deep sleep. This boy had a shabby appearance and kept having strange memories mixed in with Haruto's memories. Ryo is the name of the young man with black hair. When Ryo awoke, several grown men approached him and told him to take a shower. While taking a bath, Ryo kept thinking about his mother, who had promised to take him to his hometown. But the promise was never kept because his mother was assassinated not long after. After taking a bath, several girls in white robes approached Ryo and inquired about a missing girl. Ryo stated that he had no knowledge of it, and then one of the girls, Celia Claire, released magic power to detect magic in the village. Apart from them, she couldn't find any other magic. She gave him a bag of money in exchange for questioning him before leaving. Ryo dashed home, hiding the money bag inside his shirt. When he opened the door, he was surprised by the presence of a man who stabbed a dagger into his chest. Ryo was unharmed because the man's stab hit his money bag hidden beneath his shirt. The mysterious man continued to attack until a spirit in the form of a woman appeared to awaken the magic in Ryo's body. Ryo then resisted the man's attack with the magical power he had unexpectedly gained and the martial arts skills he possessed as a result of Haruto's memories. Despite the difficulty of the battle, he was able to subdue the mysterious man. Ryo's attention was then drawn to a bag which continues to move. Ryo opened the bag to reveal a lovely young lady with blue hair. Flora Beltram was the girl Celia and the girls had been looking for earlier. Ryo found her unconscious as soon as he freed her, so he carried her back to the kingdom. But Celia and several other women had already arrived outside the house and seen Ryo carrying Flora. One of the women was apparently Flora's sister, Christina Beltram, who misunderstood Ryo and slapped him. Christina suspected him of kidnapping her sister and threatened to summon him to the kingdom. A commander-in-chief named Charles Arbor interrogated and beat Ryo in the kingdom. He forced Ryo to confess to kidnapping Flora. Meanwhile, Flora regained consciousness in her room and immediately requested that Celia and a female bodyguard call Ryo. They rushed to the interrogation room and were astounded to see Ryo in such bad shape. Celia healed Ryo's wounds and led him to the room after Flora explained his innocence. Ryo eventually came to his senses, and Celia told him that the king of Bertram Kingdom would express his gratitude directly later. Ryo was taken aback, but he eventually asked Celia to teach him proper manners before meeting the king. Ryo was thanked by the king, and in return, he was given a full scholarship to study at the Bertram Kingdom Royal Institute. Celia was revealed to be 12 years old but already a teacher at the Bertram Kingdom Royal Institute. Ryo was looked down upon on the first day of school at the Royal Institute because he was an orphan and not from a noble family. Celia, on the other hand, protects Ryo and even offers to give him extra lessons after school because he misses so many. Ryo came to Celia's room when he got home from school, and Celia taught him various lessons. Because of Haruto's memories, he quickly grasped the lesson. Ryo used Haruto's memories to help him learn the sword the next day. Ryo's sword skills were praised by the teacher, despite the fact that Ryo's fighting style differed from what he was used to teaching. Not only that, but he referred to Ryo as a potential knight, which he declined. Ryo is working hard after school with Celia on the final exam day. As a result, after the exam, Ryo's and Christina's scores were the highest in the class. This achievement, however, piqued the interest of 2 other male students, who accused Ryo of cheating. Celia defended Ryo and checked to make sure he wasn't cheating. Celia expressed her concern about the other students who would dislike Ryo during their tea together in her room. He reassured her that he would be fine because she was beside him. When the teacher chooses students to compete in the night tournament, the scene shifts. Ryo was chosen to participate by the teacher, despite the disapproval of the other students because he was an orphan. They also made fun of Ryo, who couldn't use magic. However, The teacher's decision was final, and Ryo faced Charles in the tournament's first round. Charles appears to harbor a grudge against Ryo, whom he blames for his 5-year demotion. Ryo won the match when he slashed Charles's wooden sword towards his neck. Following the tournament, the students will practice at school and take a predetermined route through the forest. The route was taken by 2 male students who had previously accused Ryo of cheating. They followed the path and defeated a swarm of monsters. However, they did not arrive at their destination as shown on the map at the end of the route. Instead, there was only a ravine in front of them. Another swarm of monsters appeared out of nowhere to attack. They worked together to defeat the monster, but it was futile. When one of the male students became injured, he inadvertently pushed Flora until she was about to fall into a ravine. Ryo, who saw this quickly, saved the princess, but he fell into the cliff. When Ryo's other friends noticed him falling, they accused him of pushing Flora. Meanwhile, Ryo, who had managed to save himself, chose to flee after hearing his classmates' accusations. Unfortunately, a larger monster appeared at that precise moment to attack them. Even Flora's classmates attempted to fight back, but ultimately fled, leaving Flora alone. Ryo was finally forced to come out of hiding to save Flora once more. After slashing the monster's hand and heads, he was able to defeat it. Ryo was noticed in the distance by a mysterious man who had apparently sent monsters to attack them. The head of Bertram Kingdom Royal Institute blamed Ryo for the incident that endangered Princess Flora's safety at school. He confirmed Ryo's disappearance, which made Celia concerned about his condition. Fortunately, Ryo was able to sneak into Celia's room not long after, where she was greeted with a warm hug by the teacher. When he sat down to speak, Ryo requested permission to leave the kingdom to visit his mother's hometown. He promised to send news to Celia via letter under the pen name Haruto. Ryo travels until he reaches a city and meets a girl named Lot. He bought food and wrote a letter to Celia while he was there. Ryo continued on his journey until he came across a young girl who had passed out in the middle of the forest. When he rescued her, the young beastkin girl shot poison at him. Ryo, fortunately, was able to neutralize the poison with his magic. Ryo was able to restrain the girl's body after the two got into a fight. That's when he noticed she was imprisoned by slavery magic. In the flashback scene, one of Ryo's classmates casts slavery magic on the girl and orders her to murder Ryo. Ryo was able to free the girl from the spell of slavery. She introduced herself as Latifa while crying. He asked her to go to a region where humans and beastkins could coexist peacefully. Latifa, on the other hand, chose to follow Ryo rather than obey his words. Ryo initially refused because he didn't trust her, prompting her to beg him to use slavery magic on her. Ryo was eventually melted, and they continued their journey together. Ryo and Latifa set up a tent for the night after a long walk. Ryo prepared the food he had purchased in the city. Surprisingly, Latifa recognized the dish and called it spaghetti. Not only that, but before going to bed, she confessed to missing Tokyo. Ryo realized after hearing Latifa's words that she, too, was a reincarnated Earth figure. The next day, their journey takes them deeper into the forest. A group of beastkin from the Forest of Spirits attacked Ryo as he returned to spend the night in the woods. He tried to explain that he wasn't an enemy, but when the Forest of Spirits saw Latifa inside the tent, their rage grew. They assumed Ryo had kidnapped an easy beastkin and attacked him until he fainted. They then brought him back to the village. Ryo dreamed of meeting the spirit of the woman who once saved him and awakened the magical power within him while he was unconscious. Ryo found himself in a room in the Forest of Spirits village when he awoke. Latifa arrived not long after and immediately hugged him. She expressed her concern for Ryo, who was unconscious. The Forest of Spirits group realized they had accused Ryo incorrectly and apologized. The Forest of Spirits invited Ryo to meet with the village chief the following day. Ryo inquired about the large tree on the way to the village chief's office, as if he could see it. One of the accompanying beastkin explained that the tree housed Dryad, the spirit of the giant tree. The tree was encircled by magical power, and not everyone could see it. When Ryo arrived at the village head's office, he was greeted by Forest of Spirits village officials who apologized for the misunderstanding. They were grateful that he had liberated Latifa from the spell of slavery. Ryo's request was granted as a result of the village chief's decision. Ryo initially refused, but eventually asked them to look after Latifa because he couldn't bring her with him on the trip. He also requested permission to stay in the village and learn the Forest of Spirits magic. Ryo was surprised by the presence of Dryad after obtaining the approval of the village chiefs, who suddenly stated inside Ryo's body that there was a spirit that had not yet awakened. She explained that the spirit had taken on human form, which was unusual. Ryo lives in the village with Latifa and 3 female beastkins, Sarah, Alma, and Ufia, who will assist them. The mysterious man, on the other hand, who had previously noticed Ryo, was secretly stealing a monster's egg with his student. When a festival was held in the village, Ryo took Latifa to the forest to inform her of his intention to travel alone and leave her in the village. She refused the plan and insisted on remaining with him, but he insisted on leaving her. Simultaneously, the mysterious man asked his student to bring 1 monster egg in order to attract more monsters, so that he can later take all of their eggs. The beastkins in the village noticed a monster approaching. They flocked to the forest, where they discovered the mysterious man's student carrying a monster egg. The fight started, but the student died as a result of the mysterious man's actions. Meanwhile, the monster attacks intensified, until one of them attacked Latifa, who was walking alone in the forest. Alma attempts to assist her, but their abilities fall short of those of the monster. Just as they were going to lose, Ryo arrived to save Latifa and he eventually killed the monster. The next day, Latifa apologized for bothering Ryo. Instead, he stated that she was not a bother and that he already considered her a sister. Ryo then revealed that he had left because he had promised his late mother to visit his hometown. Meanwhile, Latifa revealed that she lived in Japan and is currently reincarnated in her previous life. Ryo was given a sword and a large amount of food when he asked the village head for permission to leave. To make it easier to transport everything, one of the village heads provided a storage area that had been bewitched to penetrate space and time. Ryo kept traveling till he reached Yagumo 2 weeks later. He met Ruri and Seo, 2 girls from the village. Ruri responded that Yuba, the local chief, was her grandma when he requested to meet her. Ryo inquired about his parents, Zen and Ayame, when Yuba met him. When Yuba questions Ryo about his parents, she admits that she knows both of them because Zen is her son. Ryo was glad to have found the correct village. Then he made known that he intended to travel to the village to build tombs for his parents. Yuba asked Ryo to see the tomb since it appeared like the graves for Ryo's parents had already been constructed. He asked Yuba's permission to stay in the village temporarily after praying at the tomb. Ryo moves to the village and meets 2 new friends, Shin and Dola. Unexpectedly, the son of the village chief next door, Gon, arrived. He must have stopped at Yagumo because the cart he planned to take to the capital was broken. However, Gon's arrival is not without incident, as he fights and nearly strangles Shin. Ryo and Yuba arrived just in time. Yuba allows Gon and his friend to stay in the village for a short time. Later that night, Gon quietly enters Ruri and Seo's room. Fortunately, before going to sleep, Ryo gave the 2 girls a red crystal so that he could immediately save them if they were in danger. He dashed over to Ruri, who was on the verge of being raped by Gon. Ryo's rage erupted when he remembered his mother's death, and he beat Gon so hard that he nearly killed him. Ryo's actions fortunately can still be stopped, and the next day, Ryo apologizes to Yuba and the villagers for causing a commotion. Yuba instructs Hayate, a young village guard, to take Gon to prison the following day. She then left a letter for Goki, Hayate's father. After reading the letter, Goki rushed to Ryo. Goki revealed that he used to be Ryo's mother servant. He reveals that Ayame was once the Karasuki Kingdom's princess. He claims Zen was Ayame's bodyguard until a prince from another kingdom fell in love with her and planned to kidnap her. Zen was able to save her while also killing the prince's men. If the two kingdoms wanted to reach an agreement, the prince demanded that Ayame marry him. King Karasuki disapproved, so he ordered Zen and Ayame to flee. Goki then invites Ryo to visit the kingdom and meet King and Queen Karasuki. Ryo told them about Zen and Ayame in front of them. At the time, Lucius, Zen's former comrade in arms, assassinated Ayame in front of Ryo. He told the king about his plan to avenge his mother's death. When King Karasuki learned of this plan, he asked Ryo to practice competing against Goki. Before taking revenge, the king wanted to assess Ryo's abilities. The fight with Goki followed. Despite the fact that Goki had taken the lead after casting magic power, Ryo managed to keep it until he finally subdued him. Goki finally surrendered and acknowledged Ryo's greatness. Ryo then returned to his parents' grave and vowed to avenge them. Ryo eventually requests permission to leave the village for Yuba and Ruri. He appears to plan on returning to the Forest of Spirits and meeting with the village chiefs. Ryo approached the village chief and requested that he construct a house for him to live in. The village head granted Ryo's request. Ryo awoke to find a female sleeping beside him. The spirit that had been inside him all this time was the girl. And she appeared to be bound to him. When Ryo discovered that the spirit lacked a name, he finally gave it the name Aisha. Ryo arranged for Aisha to meet the village leaders and the dryads. Dryad inquires about Aisha's magic element, and she responds that she can master all magic elements. This astounded the villagers, including Dryad, because no spirit could master all of the elements. They challenged Ryo and Aisha to a fight to prove it. The battle was fierce, and Aisha truly could imitate all of Ryo's magical elements. Dryad finally stopped fighting and put her faith in Aisha's abilities. Ryo intended to leave the Forest of Spirits village as soon as possible. Earlier, while taking a bath, Latifa approached Ryo and revealed that she was the girl who died on the bus with Haruto in her previous life. Ryo requests permission to leave the village again the next day. The village chief gave him a tool that allowed him to teleport back to the Forest of Spirit village. They also give him an earring that changes the color of his hair in order to return to the Bertram Kingdom in disguise. Ryo was surprised to see a busier atmosphere than usual when he arrived in Clea, the capital of the Bertram Kingdom. He dashed over to the Bertram Kingdom Royal Institute in search of Celia. When he finally got in, she was nowhere to be found. Instead, he meets a man who informs him that Celia is in the kingdom preparing for her marriage to Charles Arter. The man explained that the Bertram Kingdom had fallen after the war. They were on the verge of losing the entire kingdom, but the Arter family was able to negotiate. But in exchange, they demanded a political marriage between Charles and Celia. Ryo insisted on meeting Celia and requested Aisha's assistance in sneaking into Celia's room. Celia immediately hugged Ryo upon entering the room, and he asked if she wanted the marriage. Celia unexpectedly responded that she did want to marry Charles and asked Ryo not to attend the wedding. Ryo was apparently dissatisfied with Celia's words, and he was determined to intervene on her wedding. The day before the wedding, Charles called Celia to introduce her to his other 6 wives. Celia appears surprised, and Christina approaches her at that moment. She apologizes for forcing Celia to marry Charles for the sake of the kingdom. Celia and Charles led a procession through the royal streets prior to the ceremony. Aisha communicated with Celia via telepathy, asking her to look for Ryo among the crowds of people watching the procession. Celia's heart broke when she saw Ryo, and she burst into tears. Ryo's intention to disrupt the wedding was apparently confirmed, as he attacked inside while the ceremony was taking place. Ryo attacked all of the guards until he captured Celia after knocking Charles to the ground. Ryo used telepathy to communicate with Celia as he prepared to abduct her. He asks if she wants to flee with him because he doesn't want to leave her again. Celia accepted Ryo's invitation, and without hesitation, Ryo carried her away from the wedding ceremony. The conflict does not end there. The bodyguards continued to attack Ryo despite his resistance. Finally, Reese, a mysterious man who had previously kept an eye on Ryo, attacked him. Ryo evaded Reese's attack once more, despite the fact that the battle intensified when the strongest knight in the kingdom, Alfred Immel, attacked him. Alfred used a sword move that forced Ryo to flee as quickly as possible. Ryo fled to the location where he had previously asked Aisha to save Celia. Celia hugged Ryo as he returned safely, relieved to be back together. But at that moment, many strange pillars of light appeared in the sky. Celia and Ryo were perplexed as they stared at the pillar, but Aisha seemed to know something and hurriedly pleaded with Ryo to save someone. A group of men kidnapped 3 children in a field. Ryo discovered a cell phone that allows him to locate the children, indicating that they are from Earth. Ryo heard a familiar Japanese voice after arriving at a heavily guarded hut. He beat the group of men and freed the kidnapped children without thinking any longer. Ryo realized at that point that one of the 3 children was his childhood friend, Ayase Miharu. Ryo's assistance in freeing Ayase concludes the anime series. If you loved this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on another one. Until next time.